Hello and welcome to our weekly IG Live. Today I'm excited to be talking to author and friend Aditi Wardhan Singh. She has written a number of books for children as well as books for adults, and she's an editor. But today we're going to be focusing on her brand new book, which is The Sparkles Within. But don't worry, we're going to get the whole backstory and find out what the inspiration for this book and the series was, and about her background as a third culture child. Aditi is not only an author and editor, but she is a respected voice teaching people about multicultural parenting, and especially about parenting third culture kids, about raising confident multicultural kids. So we will hear all about that as well. Hold on just a minute while I get her on here. She has a whole series of books that teach emotional.
Oh,
what's the word for it? Emotional.
sorry.
That's all right. I'm like stumbling on my words here. The emotional development, emotional wellness. What's the emotional intelligence? That's what I was trying to think of. So these are great books, not just for multicultural kids and third culture kids, but really any kids. It's great for teaching confidence, teaching about diversity, and so many other things. But Aditi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to chat with you, Liana. It's been years I have known you now. I can actually say that. You're one of my best internet friends, and I can't wait someday to meet you in person.
I know. It's kind of funny for me to realize that we have never met in person, because like you said, we've known each other for a long time. And
Yeah.
I was also realizing, hi, Ayute.
Hi, Ayute.
Also chatted before. If you haven't checked it out, I got to interview her for Makeaway Media for Multicultural Children's Book Day, and I just recently watched her on the Families Embracing Diversity conference. She was a panelist there, and I love getting to talk to you because you have so many insights to share, besides just being a friend of mine, of course. But in terms of the interviews, I feel like we could talk for a really long time because there's so many different things to talk about. Maybe we could step back a little bit and talk about your history as a third culture kid, raising third culture kids, and why this is so important, how that kind of has informed your work. Like I said, you have, if people can see here, you have a lot of books for children, but also books for adults about raising multicultural children, and also this book of stories, which is really amazing. But it all kind of what would you say is the thread that kind of holds them all together, and where does that inspiration come from?
Oh gosh, that's a lot to unpack in, I think, even a day.
Yeah.
But let me try. Hello, everyone. I am Aditi Wardhan Singh. My growth as a writer first has been from being a blogger to a freelance writer to creating Raising World Children, because I did not know multicultural kids blogs was existing then. And then I was the editor of all the articles there, and we were 150 almost after 5-6 years writing together, writers. And then, of course, the tangent went into publishing. And now I publish and I help other authors publish books that are based on multicultural life and lived stories. I help edit. I help in every aspect of self-publishing, because it's a difficult journey, as is multicultural parenting, which is something I'm extremely passionate about, because I was a third culture kid growing up. I'm Indian, and I was born and raised in Kuwait, actually. So the first time I was asked, where are you from, or who are you, was when I was 11, and I've spoken about that multiple times in my articles and books. And once I had kids, when my kids had issues about, I don't want to speak Hindi, or I don't understand why that kid is doing that, or why do we do this tradition or celebration, or I don't want to wear Indian clothes, they scratch, I never pushed them, because I could understand where they're coming from. Because often we underestimate the multiple borders that our children are raised on. It is quite easy to say, hey, you know what, you're from this heritage, and we have to have these values. But we need to understand the need of a balance in our children's lives, because and I teach creative writing to students in the afternoons for a couple of hours. And I love the conversations we have, and the fact that I'm able to empower them also with the understanding that, hey, you know what, you're American with so and so heritage. Because so many kids, like, they don't even see themselves as American, and they feel, and that leads to, there's nothing wrong with that, but it just leads them to feel that they don't have the right to be here as much as anyone else. And that is the problem, I think, with many adults when we struggle with the imposter syndrome as citizens, even. And even as, balancing our cultures and what we're teaching our kids. So that is, I think, the essence of what I'm trying to do is when I'm talking about cultural sensitivity in tandem with self-empowerment is because I truly, truly believe that when we understand our own culture, when we are accepting of other cultures, and not just cultures as in traditional cultures or religion, but I mean even schools of thoughts, is when we can be more confident in our own being and say, hey, you know what, it's fine if you believe that. It doesn't threaten me in any way because I am confident in what I believe in. And we need to have that dialogue. So, like you said, the sparkles within, you'll see, I'll show everyone a turned around picture since everyone has already seen my TV. So you'll see there are kids, sparkles of joy and the sparkles within both are a little bit more about different kids and different types of kids and how they can coexist with their religions and their cultures. And of course, Raising the Global Mindset there is a wonderful book that had 25 women around the world writing about how we can raise kids together. And all of this is what Raising World Children is about, where I empower parents, writers, and brands to go forth and create more cultural awareness because that's so important for all of us today.
And I really encourage anybody who's watching, if you haven't checked out her blog or the Instagram feed or read any of the books, I encourage you to do that because what is great is a lot of us talk about these kind of big ideas, inclusivity, cultural sensitivity, but you really go into like the nitty gritty of particular situations, like what to do if there's a tradition that you don't understand what it's about, or deciding whether your family is going to continue it. What if your kids don't want, you get into like these real life situations, whereas a lot of us talk in these big abstract concepts, and you're getting into like the day-to-day. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that actually look like? How do you handle when your kids ask this question? And if I like one of your books, fortunately I just grabbed this one. Well, one of your books came out of his conversations you had with your kids about talking about race and where does that actually come from? Or I think it wasn't your daughter who was getting teased for being smaller than the other kids. So these all come out of like real situations and real conversations. Let's see. Oh, and you've got a comment says, I totally agree. So important to keep our cultures alive through our kids. Yes, definitely. Thank you for that. So
Yes.
do you want to talk, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just would like to speak to her comment is it is important to keep our culture alive through our kids, but it's also important, and this is totally my opinion, no one has to agree with it, is to give kids the space in which they themselves can come towards the culture, just like we should not live our dreams through our kids. Similar way, honestly, this is what I believe, that we shouldn't force our culture on our kids. We should teach them, make them aware, let them understand, and then choose. And that is much more empowering because the world is constantly like, hey, why do you do this? Hey, why do you do that? Hey, you look funny or you eat funny. And when they themselves are accepting of it and they want to do it is when they really, own up to it and say, hey, you know what? If you are questioning it, it's absolutely fine because this is who I am and I'm comfortable and happy about it.
That's a really great point because I think that it is kind of a balance, like you said, how to empower them without forcing the culture on them. But I think a lot of parents, we get kind of worried that because we're so immersed in this, the mainstream culture here in the U.S., for example, that if we don't, but force is maybe too strong a word, but if we don't do that, that maybe our kids are naturally going to reject it. But I think a lot of what your books are doing is it really is empowering and helping kids build that confidence so that they don't mind if they're doing something different than what their peers are doing.
Yes, it's really important. And if anyone is worried, whoever's watching this, please remember that I am a big example. Was raised in Kuwait. My mom was not religious or cultural for that matter, but it was just by osmosis, I think, that today, there are so many things I do culturally that even my mom is like, hey, wait, what? And she became religious much later.
Mhm.
I was a voracious reader, and I used to read all these mythological stories and multiple times, because with your age you understand those stories in different ways, and that is where my learning came from. So again, like, you and I are great advocates of reading to learn, not just reading to read to, get ahead on those levels, because that's what schools do these days, but to understand, read to understand and empower yourself.
Oh,
Yes.
and just a follow-up comment said the best is when our kids get excited to share our cultural language to friends without us even suggesting it. Yes, that is a great
Yes.
feeling when you see them have that pride that's not you telling them to do it, but they just kind of it comes naturally from them.
Yes. Always. I have always had kids at my home. Most of my kids' friends come over every weekend or once in a week, always. And it's wonderful to hear the conversations they have. And it's so enlightening because the things they say to each other, oh my God, I cannot tell you sometimes, and not in a bad way. It makes you feel like, these kids have a pride and they want to share their culture. Like my son, sometimes he'll be explaining, Hinduism, some God's powers to someone. And I'm like, then I listen and I'm like, okay, next time I said, when you're teaching, then maybe this thing you should be telling more about so that you are more aware. Because kids like they're like, oh, you don't assume that I'm Italian, so I like eat this food, and they love discussing the culture, which is so important. Like how she said that sometimes you just want to share, and they're friends. You want to share everything that's special to you with your friends, and it comes naturally. But yes, and that's something I've spoken a lot. And luckily today I have all my books with me. Usually I
Are you
don't.
getting Sparkles of Joy? Because I was thinking Sparkles of Joy is also just about that.
Yes, Sparkles of Joy and Strong Roots Have No Fear. In this book, I've spoken a lot about when culture is like sand, when you force it, it goes out of your hand. So you need to have space for it and create an understanding rather than just enforcing. So that's something I really do believe in. And it's so wonderful when the kids themselves want to share it.
Yeah, it is. And I want to make sure we have time to talk about your new book, which is a lot about building up confidence. And I mean, it doesn't talk directly about culture like we've been talking about, and yet it's really there because you can see it
Yeah.
in the way that people are dressing, but also the different traditions and how. And I love that it shows that even in this main character that she has different traditions that they're incorporating in their house, but you can also see if I can pull it up really quickly.
Yeah.
And you see a symbolism of other religions that's being
Mm.
shared. But why don't you tell us a little bit about this and how it kind of relates to the larger project that you have?
Oh, yes, definitely. So, my mission, for the lack of a better word, is to help kids understand how to live a better life by not feeling forced, right? So, I have always been inclined towards words. I have always been inclined towards dancing. It's been my passion. They both are like, if you tell me to read a book or write something, I will sit down and leave everything, even eating, and I'll do it. But for my kids, I've seen because, or maybe it's just their nature, or because they are so, they have so many options. I don't know which one. They're still struggling with what they absolutely love. Like, they're still trying to figure themselves out. And that gave me the idea for this book, where you can see that this girl, she is dancing, and then these friends are like, encouraging her, and they are all doing different. And India has so many different dance forms and so many different cultural things. So the germ of the idea was that I would want children to understand that, you are, and you have time to figure out your talent, because so many parents like today are like, oh, if my kid is good at singing, then they put them into official singing classes immediately. Like, they don't even wait, like, let them explore. Is it really their love, or is this something they're trying on, to see how it fits? Or if they are good at soccer, then they want them to become Pele. I think that's what the soccer guy's name is.
Yeah, yeah.
But you need to give your kids the space in which they can grow and let them just explore their own self, because if the kids don't have free time in which to explore themselves, and that's the related to gadget use, which we should talk about some other time, definitely. But it is important for kids to have that understanding that first, you don't need to, know your talent immediately. You don't have to be like everyone else. You can figure out that you have time, and there are different ways to figure it out also. Two, I wanted kids to know that we all see sparkles in different things. Like, what you find is not that great. Maybe I look at it and I'll be like, hey, like some days when we are feeling very blah and we dress up and we go out and someone says, oh, you're looking so beautiful, and you're feeling horrible inside. But when someone says that, you feel better about yourself. So that's so important to do. Then, of course, there was the fact, and this is something I believe, is that we all kind of get stuck in our culture and our citizenship, and but the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, it's our values and our own talents that make us who we are. Our culture and all these are part of us. They're not just completely us. So by the end of this book, you'll see she's figured out that, oh, you know what? This is something I can do, and she enjoys. And her friends help her in figuring out the best way to do something. So in this page, you'll see they all work together, and then they figure out to how to make each other stand taller, right? To be better. And that's something I hope all kids learn, that, we all need to empower each other and be there for each other and help each other grow, which is what Raising World Children, the platform, is about, where I always say, I don't have all the answers. I'm learning constantly. My opinion evolves. My understanding evolves. And I believe we are all raising children together. Wherein when I see something Liana posts, I'm like, hey, wait, that's a great thought. And when I see a parent sharing about their struggles, I'm like, hey, that's a great thought. So we all learn. And how Maya Angelou said so beautifully is, when you know better, you do better. So that's what this book is about, where we all can find different sparkles within. And no matter which walk of life you're coming from, it's a beautiful understanding of who you are. And that's what I hope this book helps kids with.
One of the things I love about it, which fits right into talking about developing your confidence and also your confidence as a multicultural person living in a multicultural world, is when the mom is telling the daughter not to worry if she's not like her friends. Like, she doesn't have to do things just like they do. Like you said, it's about finding her unique talents and not feeling badly because maybe she can't play soccer like so and so, she can't dance like this other person. That it's okay, and we all blossom in different times. And she uses as an example, she draws
Yes,
from,
I was going to show that page.
yeah, which is so cool, because I mean, this is a book for everybody, but it also draws from like a specific culture, but it's in a way that is so universal, like that I think everybody can relate to. But that, I think a lot of times kids do get into that. Well, all of us do, really. I mean, as adults, I mean, being on social media, that's one of the big problems, comparing yourself to other people, right?
Yes.
Like you said, instead of seeing us as a community and how we can learn from each other, think, oh, look at their feet, and she's doing that really cool craft with her kids, or look, they're traveling, and why can't I do that? Instead of saying like, oh, how can I learn from that and incorporate it, but still being confident in yourself. And I think that is what she's learning in the book, is that she doesn't have to be just like her friends, but like you said, there's a community, they're all encouraging each other, and they really do help her figure out what her unique talents are and help her, like you said, like see things that are inside her that maybe she didn't even notice because she was kind of too busy comparing herself to them.
Yeah. So it's crucial, and I have to say that I really hope that books like mine are widely read, not because because my age group for my books is, I say 6 to 9, because that is, these days most kids read chapter books, but chapter books are a lot about fantasy and comics and the fun element and things like that. But these books are like value based, and I have seen with my son going in middle school is that there is so much questioning and fitting in and desire to fit in that happens, and pulling each other's leg, and the roasting is like a big thing. And often it chips away their confidence. Before, sorry, I haven't been well. So it's a struggle for kids. So I really hope that, maybe not 6 to 9 if your kids are already reading, maybe like between 3 to 8 is it's very important that we give kids the foundation on which, if anyone questions them, they are already always ready to, I mean, it's never easy, but at least they have some resource to dig into and say that, okay, fine, this moment is passing, and it's just this moment, and a few minutes later I'm going to be fine. So I hope that, all kids have that.
And you even incorporate in here, because part of it is that she has stage fright and she's
Yes.
nervous to go up. So it even has elements about her learning how to do, the breathing exercises. So I mean, it's just incorporated so nicely into the story. But that's something that kids can remember. I mean, if we just sit down and tell them, maybe they won't remember it as well, but if it's incorporated into a story with a character they identify with, then that's something that really sticks with them.
So
And I think
fun fact is, I have always loved dancing, but I had a lot of, I used to dance on stage even as a kid. But if my mom would tell me to, how they say, dance in front of uncle, auntie, like, show your talents, I would freak out. I would like throw a tantrum because I had the, like, even now I have stage fright. Like, if you tell me to dance anywhere, I'm fine. But public speaking and all that, and that's where that came from. That, how do you deal? And that's how I deal with stage fright even today. I'll distract myself to the last moment. Like, when we're about to go on stage, I'll dance backstage, like on some random song, I'll start dancing. I'll have a conversation with someone else and distract myself. And then, I'll take a few breaths and then I'll go on stage and I'll be like, okay, now I just have to perform.
And actually, I was just thinking about how that's something for us good to talk with our kids about, because sometimes they, like, if somebody just sees you because you do a lot of public speaking, they might not guess that that's something that you're nervous about, because they just see the final product of you coming out and speaking. And I think it's important for them to know that adults go through that too. And you even touch upon that in the book about her, whose mother, Warren's mother,
Warren's mother, yes.
Who was also feeling nervous. And she felt encouraged watching the show. And so she came out and shared her talent. So I think that's good for kids to know about, that this is something we're all struggling with, and we can kind of learn together and encourage each other. And maybe, like you said, a lot of them are in this culture where it's fun to roast each other and make fun of each other, to also realize that we need to encourage each other, especially if they recognize their friend is going through a hard time, to find the balance. It's good to joke around with each other, but also to see the times that you need to kind of boost each other up.
Yeah. No, it's so important because if you see in the last pages, and I feel that our kids somehow, maybe because we have such a child-led society at the moment, I feel like often kids don't see parents as human beings. We kind of become like someone they take for granted. So in all my books, you'll have these subtle ways in which kids are a little bit more compassionate towards the adults, and they are more understanding, and the adults are also vulnerable. So you'll see that. So in this book, you'll also see that the adults are dancing, that this is the grandmother and this is the father and the fathers, and they're all performing. Because a lot of people have this misconception that men don't dance, or that, when you're old, you're done, you're not going to dance anymore, or you're not going to live life. And I want kids to remember that, at the end of the day, and even Hawaskin Sparkles and another book of mine, you will see the parents sharing their vulnerabilities. And that's something I'm huge on, that the only way, like, how do you build friendships, right? You don't build friendships by just giving lessons all the time, right? You build friendships by being vulnerable and saying, what, this is what happened to you. I'm listening to you. I'm here. And this is what happened to me. And maybe and then you have a conversation about how you both can be better people. And I think that's so important to do with kids as well. That tell them that, when they're talking about bullying, you say, hey, you know what, I've experienced this in my life. And how do you think, we can do better? Because kids, they flourish more when the idea is from them. So in every children's book you'll see, and this is true for all children's books, you want the kid to understand, the kid to have the understanding of why they are, what is happening, how they can be better people. So that's really important too. So they get the confidence. And hey, you know what? My mom has also made this mistake. Hey, you know what? It's okay. Like my son was struggling in middle school in the beginning, in a couple of months ago, and I told him, I said, it's a new environment. We understand. I went on a new environment. I understand. But often we kind of like, oh, you know, how could you fail and how can you get bad grades and things like that. And we have to, you know, show them. And that's why the series that I did when the book was launching was called Stop Scrolling and Let's Get Creative, because I want parents to get creative. We can't just expect, we can be like, hey, here are supplies, here are classes, go get creative. No, we have to lead by example and get creative in our lives and not fill our bowls with just mindless scrolling, but by being creative and using our hands and creating something that is not for money, that is not for likes, or it's not for any purpose but except giving you joy. And when you do that, you're creating an environment where your child also is like, hey, I can do this just because it makes me happy. It doesn't have to have a purpose. Because I feel our happiness is very, has become over time very conditional. If this happens, then I'll be happy. If that will happen, then I'll be happy. No, but you have to be happy now. You have to know how to be happy, even in the most miserable circumstances. So that's what I hope most of the kids take away from all these books. Even Within has a few stories in which Within is my book for adults. It's a bunch of short stories which are not preachy, I hope, but they share about my culture, but and situations that I've seen. But they also help a person face one of the emotions that every story is about, to understand that hey, you know what? It's okay. You can just be happy by being in the now, and that's fine.
I think that is a great message to end on. I'm watching. I know you need to go too,
Yes.
but that really is, and it comes across in all of your books about how to have the confidence, how to work through all these emotions, like the emotional intelligence for kids, but also for ourselves. Like you say, if we are showing them how we find joy and to be authentic in our own lives, and that is leading by example, like
Yeah.
you said. So, Art, the new book is The
Yes.
Sparkle,
Thank you.
and it's part of a
Yeah,
whole
I see
series
this.
of books
I
you
think
can
another
find.
page.
Yeah. And also, like you said, that she has books on parenting books and a book of stories, which I really love. I mean,
Oh,
they're all really wonderful. So please do check them out. She's at Raising World Children, or you can follow her at her own, which is it Aditi W. Singh, I think.
yes.
Well,
Uh,
we'll have it linked in this when we post
yes.
it. So if you
Perfect.
joined us late, I will have this up on Instagram in just a few minutes, and then we will have it later up on YouTube so you can watch the whole thing. Aditi, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us. It's always so fun to talk.
you. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. And anyone who has any issues or any questions or is looking to write a book, please, of course, feel free to reach out anytime. I pretty much am here during the working hours online. I mean.
And really has so much experience and things to share. So I do encourage people.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye, Liana.